Louise, welcome back to Wealth Talk today.
Hi, Christian. How are you today?
I'm doing very fine, thank you. And I enjoyed your session yesterday. You were doing a panel. Why don't you just quickly tell us about what you were up to?
Yeah, it was great. I was invited by Mark Stokes, who runs SAS Alliance, who founded SAS Alliance actually, and runs that with Kevin. I was invited to convene and run a panel on women in SAS because it's actually quite a male-dominated space. I think our SAS Alliance membership comprises about 25% women, 75% men, and so I'm trying to make SAS, I suppose, relevant to women, or at least be sort of the female face really for SAS Alliance. So Mark and Kevin asked me to convene a panel of other women SAS trustees to talk about our journeys, what we were doing with our SAS, what it meant to us as women, and what it means, as wealth builders as well. So yeah, that was very well received, Christian. I was really happy to do that.
Yeah, and you were with familiar names as well. Sean, a previous member, and Carol, one of our wealth coaches. So
absolutely, yeah. And Manj Mahal as well, who's a wonderful SAS trustee. So yeah, it was really nice to collaborate with them and for them to tell their stories. And we got loads of great feedback from both men and women, but a lot of women particularly resonating with us and saying, yeah, that looks pretty interesting. I'd like to do what you're doing. So if we can inspire a few women towards financial independence and providing for their retirement through SAS, then, that's a good result.
Well, we're going to hear your story today, Louise, because you are our member spotlight for March, and we're going to run through our roadmap. So you joined us as a founder member right back on day one. So back in 2019, just coming up to 2 years ago now. So you've seen our program evolve, and you have evolved, and it's been tremendous to be able to, watch that. And we're going to dive straight in and start to find out what are some of the steps that you've taken along the way, Louise, to help you to start building more recurring income. So let's begin back at the beginning. And that's always step one, which is getting really clear on your mindset and your reason why. So was there a particular catalyst or a point that you can think back to, Louise, where you said to yourself, I just got to do something about this?
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, because I think a lot of people say they're family, and so I'm no different there. But it's probably a combination of things, wanting to make sure I provided for my family. And I've got two girls that are both young teenagers now. And my eldest daughter does have some disabilities. And so I'd started to think about her growing up and achieving, independence from us. And we expected to achieve independence from us, but potentially not on the same timeline as one would expect, a daughter or son without disabilities. So my daughter's autistic and she's got a collection of other disabilities. She's extremely bright and has a lot of talent, but she needs a lot of support as well. So I'd started to think about, I suppose, my impending mortality, heading towards 50 and beyond, and, how I was going to provide for her if she needed additional support, throughout her life. I think just that natural sort of, coming up to midlife, middle age, 50 plus, you start to think, well, this may be the decade in which I'll retire. What's my retirement going to look like? Am I going to start to, perhaps work part-time or, exit corporate life? And if so, what does my retirement look like? So it was a real combination of things, really, Chris. But I suppose I'd naturally started some of this journey myself, and I'd started to look into building a property portfolio, for example, and I'd already started that. But when I, met Kevin, we talked about SAS pensions to start with, actually, and then I did hear the very first podcast of Wealth Talk when you launched the program. I think I was possibly, this is my claim to fame, I'm going to claim that I was the first person to sign up. I must have been in the first few anyway, because I remember sitting in my car at a railway station. I was on my way to catch the train to London in my day job, and I listened to the podcast on the way there, and then I sat in my car and sent the email off right there, straight away, when you opened the gates to the 7 Steps to Wealth program, and that was the beginning of a more educated journey, and I suppose a more broad and wide ranging journey than the property journey that I was on.
Excellent. And at the beginning as well, we always talk about, thinking about the future with the end in mind. One of the exercises in step one is creating your family wealth business as well. So you've touched on the importance of family there, but that was, I know, something you put together as a collective, and really enjoyed seeing that.
We did, yeah. My oldest daughter that I've already mentioned is a very talented artist, and so, I try to talk that we try to talk to the children about wealth building, and I just said to her, "Would you think about a family logo for us for our wealth business?" We'd talked to them about the SAS, and we'd got a name for the SAS that was already set up, the SAS pension. We decided to name the family business or the family wealth business in the same way, and so. Quite independently of any ideas from me, she said, well, if it's family, it needs to be a coat of arms kind of idea. So she's drawn a beautiful coat of arms that features some things that are precious to us, including our dogs. They're in there as well. And some symbolic things that were around the naming of the SAS and the naming of the family wealth business as well. So yeah, I've got that, on my screensaver, on my laptop, on my phone, and that's there to remind us all, what we're doing.
Yeah. And it was no surprise when you took the Wealth Dynamics test that you turned out to be a star, Louise. So how's that helped you in your journey?
Do you know, when I first took it, I actually had a bit of a is this? It was almost a setback to me to see that result, Chris, and I'll explain why. I'm a 30-year plus corporate marketer in big businesses in the healthcare and life sciences and pharma industries, and so I took the Wealth Dynamic test, and it came out as a star. So I wasn't very surprised about that when I read the description. So I'm a star with creative undertones and with supportive dynamic as well, but primarily a star, which means that I shine a light on people, projects, and processes and products, which is a pretty typical wealth dynamic for someone that works in marketing, which I'd done for all these years. And so I thought, okay, that makes sense. Does that tell me that I'm in the right day job? Yeah. How on earth is this going to apply to wealth building? Because surely I need to suddenly transform, as if by magic, into some sort of number cruncher that's really good with spreadsheets and is really good at doing due diligence on, businesses that I want to invest in, or, property deals that I want to invest in. And so I was a little bit disheartened, actually. I thought, how's this going to work? I'd just not fully understood it, really. And so through a process of reflecting upon it and, going through a process with my wealth coach and on my own of just thinking, well, what is my plan going to be, across the 7 pillars, then it started to dawn on me that I could use all of these marketing skills and this star wealth dynamic in the pillars that I wanted to focus on, and in the wealth building journey as well. So, for example, fairly early in the journey, I decided I was writing a book. I was creating intellectual property. I went out and marketed that. That started to build me a profile, within the wealth building and the SAS Alliance communities. That's now leading to, opportunities in all sorts of areas. So I suppose that's just one example of, understanding the wealth dynamic, but then critically, that may have been a really good match for your previous or current career, but then how can you use that instead of ignoring it and thinking you've got to change? How do you then just leverage that into your wealth building? So it took a while for the penny to drop, but I understand how I'm using it now.
Yeah, great. So that takes into step 2, and that's the wealth gap, Louise. So this is about getting crystal clear on how much asset income that you're generating at the moment, and then how much you require in order to reach the next wealth level. So which of the 5 levels were you at when you joined, and where are you now?
Yeah, I was at financial insecurity when I joined. Before anyone feels sorry for me, I work full time in a global corporate marketing role and I earn a good salary. So while I say I'm financially insecure, all of my needs and my family needs are being met by a salary. Okay, but that still means I'm financially insecure, because if the salary disappears, and I get made redundant, or, I have to leave work for some reason, it means that the bills don't get paid. So I am still still at financial insecurity, but I am making significant inroads into my goals to be financially secure and then financially independent. So I think the key thing, Chris, is, I know what the numbers look like. I'm tracking them. I can see, what I'm adding every month. I've got a roadmap in front of me, and I think that although I'm still at the same level as when I started in terms of still being in that financial insecurity bracket, I can see the progress that I'm making, and I can see the game plan. And I think, that gives you a lot of confidence in what you're doing, and it gives you the momentum to carry on.
Absolutely. And I know that thermometer has been rising for you, and we'll perhaps touch on that when we get to step 8, which is tracking your results. But step 3 is the final step in our sort of foundational level, which is all about building that confidence. And step 3 is protection. So do you have any examples, Louise, of where you were able to, look at the roof, as we call it, and identify things that needed to be done?
Yeah, I think a few areas really, but probably the key one was just to make sure we'd got the wills and the trusts in place. We'd already done the LPAs, for example, the lasting power of attorneys, because sadly I'd been on that journey with my parents, and I lost my dad to Alzheimer's about nearly 5 years ago now. So I'd understood how important the LPAs were, the health LPA, and also the finance LPA, because I had acted as my dad's attorney in the health decisions that were made for him, and also in the financial decisions that were made as he declined. So I already knew all about that. I know that that's something that perhaps comes as a surprise to people, that at our age, we will be putting LPAs in place, but you just don't know when you're going to, have an accident that renders you, unable to communicate, for example. So I think that's a really important step that I would encourage anyone to take, and it's very easy to do. So we'd already done that, but what I did do was to review our wills, and also to make sure that we'd got mirror trusts written alongside the wills as well, which is an important part of estate planning or tax planning, such that, for example, when my life insurance pays out, if anything were to happen to me, that goes into a trust. So it's dealt with in a different way to sort of the rest of my estate. So, there's again some tax advantages around trying to just, ring fence things in trust rather than just have them all pour into one big, Louise Righton's estate bucket, which, could potentially be subject to inheritance tax.
Yeah. So once all of that is in place, that gives you that strong foundation, as you say, you know that you're building something that's going to last and is long term. So we move now into stage 2 of our roadmap, and step 4 is about the assets. So we know the 7 pillars, 7 different ways to generate recurring income. And you mentioned, I think actually, Louise, you already had some experience in one of those pillars. But what other pillars have you explored since then?
Yeah, I've explored quite a few of the pillars, and one thing that I've talked about before, Chris, that I really learned was just the need to really focus. Because I'm a marketer and I'm creative, I kind of see lots of ideas and lots of things that I want to try and think, well, I'll be able to do that. I'll have a go at that. But I think the focus. I remember Kevin saying to me, "Just pick one and focus, Louise." So. I have done some work in the home capacity pillar, and we've had a lodger for some time now, earning about £6,000 a year under the government's rent-a-room scheme, tax-free. So we've leveraged home capacity, we've leveraged an empty bedroom and an empty bathroom in our home, and that's that goes straight onto the wealth thermometer as income every month. So that's really nice. We were already working in the property pillar by having a couple of buy-to-lets, but I've been able, through my involvement in the programme, to really understand more about different property strategies. So I've now set up a new business with a new business partner who's a long-term friend of mine. We've got similar interests in in North Yorkshire and in serviced accommodation, and particularly holiday lets. So we're now building a portfolio of high quality holiday lets. So we're buying up cottages, that need renovation around the North Yorkshire National Park. And we've got our first one under refurbishment now, hoping to have that ready just as we come out of lockdown so that people can start booking that and getting away. So that's the second one that I've worked in. I've also worked in the intellectual property pillar. I mentioned earlier that I've written a book called SaaS Superstars, 10 case studies from SaaS trustees around how they've used SaaS pensions combined with property to build their wealth and to build their future. So intellectual property is quite important to me. Again, going back to my wealth dynamic as a marketer, I want to create ideas and then market ideas. So the book was an example of actually the intellectual property pillar because I wrote a book, but also it was an example of a joint venture as well because I co-produced the book with Mark Stokes, who I mentioned earlier, who's the co-founder of SaaS Alliance. So that was an example of IP and joint ventures. And then finally, pensions, I would say, has been the central sort of theme through most things that I've done. It was, so setting up my SaaS was resulted from me first meeting Kevin. Actually, it was the first thing that we discussed. And so I do have my SaaS pension now, and I've transferred my corporate pensions into that. That's now allowing me to invest with people doing property development projects and learn from them. So it's part of my education, and it's allowing me to develop my own property portfolio. And of course, it's been the catalyst for me creating intellectual property by writing a book about SaaS pensions as well. So pensions has probably been my main pillar and where I spend most of my time. It's quite a lot of work sort of going on that journey of sort of education, getting the confidence, taking the guided action, and then executing on the pension. So I've spent probably the majority of my time there, but now I'm there with that and I'm confident. That's then allowed me to, focus on some of the other pillars.
Yeah. Phew. And we're only halfway through the roadmap and all so much great stuff already. So here we go. We're moving into step 5 now. So step 5 is all about leverage, and leverage is the key to wealth building. It isn't necessarily always financial, but it could be intellectual or relationship leverage, systems, and leveraging your time. So is there any other examples that you can think of that you haven't perhaps already mentioned, Louise, of how you've brought leverage into play to help you build your wealth?
I think my main leverage has probably been financial, Chris, through the pension, because having control of that pension fund and becoming my own pension fund manager by becoming a SaaS trustee has enabled me to build relationships, to make great contacts, to build relationships, and then to, in turn, get education sort of through those relationships. So I would say that's been my key piece of leverage, and I'm just fortunate to have, good pensions from, a lifetime working in corporate that I'm, at this stage in my life able to leverage. So that's been really good. So yeah, I guess financial plus relationships. I guess I'm a natural networker, again, being a marketer and a star wealth dynamic. So I've done, before lockdown, I did do a good year of solid networking in property and SaaS communities. So I was able to identify the people that I know, like and trust, the people that I want to have relationships with, do business with, collaborate with, learn from. And therefore, what I'm doing with my SaaS, but then also the idea for the book came out of all of that as well. So I'd say probably financial and relationships are the two that I've leveraged. I'm very time poor because I still work full time and I'm, trying to do a lot, as you've heard. So that's the one that I suffer from. But, again, coming back to Kevin teaches me about focus on turning the wheel of wealth, focus on just what you're doing in that moment and in that time. Don't try and be scattergun and do everything at once, because then you get frustrated and lose your momentum. So they're my key learnings from step 5, I think,
Yeah.
Chris.
Well, what I love about you, Louise, even though you say your time poor is, 2 years into the program, you still submit a progress report every month. You're still on the Q&As every month. You're there. You're absorbing information, and I think that's a key part of your success as well. Is your commitment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
step
agree.
6 is strategy. Now, we've heard some of the strategies that you've been working on, Louise, but this is often where some people can really hit overwhelm because there's just so many different things that you could be doing. And of course, the next step is about focus, which we'll touch on in a minute. But I mean, defining a strategy, it is difficult because there's many things. Any advice or just tips for people who perhaps are, unsure where they should be looking at and trying to do too many things at the same time, perhaps?
Yeah. And I think this is where people potentially sort of get confused or talk at cross purposes, Chris, because we've got the 7 pillars. And even when you pick a pillar, let's say I pick the property pillar is the most obvious one, you've still got many, many strategies that you could employ within the property pillar, right? So property isn't a strategy. Property is an asset class. It's one of the 7 pillars, one of the 7 asset classes. But it's not a strategy. So even when you've chosen that pillar, you then still need to choose a strategy within that. So my example is I'd done a couple of residential buy-to-lets. I then said, right, I want a strategy in property, which gives me a high level of cash flow. I actually spent about a year, maybe even longer, looking at HMOs versus serviced accommodation and really just exposing myself to some education, reading, joining free webinars, on the internet, sort of watching people's Facebook lives, all sorts of things, just to get a feel for how it would be to operate in each one of these spaces. And it's impossible to compare them in a way. They've got lots of different pros and cons. All you can say about them in common is that they are both, in theory, higher cash flowing strategies and higher yielding strategies than a vanilla buy-to-let strategy. And there's nothing wrong with, normal buy-to-let if that's what you want to do. You can perfectly well reach financial independence and beyond just with a buy-to-let strategy. But yeah, that's an example of choosing a strategy. It took me a year. And at times I was really beating myself up and saying, I'm just not getting started. I don't know whether to do HMOs or serviced accommodation. What am I going to do? But I just took my time, and then slowly, the gut feel was telling me, do serviced accommodation and just really focus. Then, of course, there's a sub-strategy, which is holiday lets, because serviced accommodation is a strategy, but there's lots of little sub-strategies within that as well. So, high quality holiday lets is now our strategy within the SA strategy within the property pillar, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed. It's very easy to beat yourself up thinking, I need to be off the starting blocks and, doing all of this stuff from day one. But, in some ways you do, whilst you need to have momentum, Chris, you do, and you need to take action, every month, and I do. You also need to just take your time as well to find out what's right for you and not just feel you need to be doing all this stuff that everyone else is doing.
Yeah, which is hopefully why, having something like a roadmap is helpful for people to know, do things in order. They're in an order for a reason. And once it's done, then you can move on and know that you have that peace of mind that is done. So
Exactly.
we talked about overwhelm often kicks in at step 6. So many different strategies, which is why when, we've helped people select a strategy, it's then about getting that clear plan and focusing on one wheel turn at a time. So this is where we bring in the wheel of wealth. And of course, that consists of education, support, connections, due diligence, and then taking guided action. And we've got our wealth coaches who are there to help you stay laser focused, turn that wheel. And what benefits have you gained, Louise, from following that process and having that accountability from your coach every 30 days?
Yeah, I think the process is phenomenal. And, again, I've said this before, this is the process that really keeps you focused on what you're doing and stops you just kind of chasing what other people are doing. So I have really worked hard to keep myself focused on turning one wheel at a time. So, last year I was doing the education in property and deciding, which strategy I was going to employ in property at the same time as writing my book. And at times that was overwhelming, and I got distracted from finishing my book by, trying to work out what I was doing in the property space. But that all worked out fine. I said to myself, I'm going to finish the book and then I'm going to start, to execute the property strategy that I've chosen. So that's what I did. For me, the wealth coaches are, the money that we pay for the program is paid back, in spades just by having these fantastic wealth coaches. Mine is Carol Robinson. She's absolutely integral to me executing on my holiday let strategy. She has SA herself, and we are right down in the detail of, capital allowances and, sourcing the right property, business rates versus council tax, all sorts of, the real nitty gritty of running a holiday let business. So I think the Wheel of Wealth is a fantastic process, to think about where you are on that wheel and how to turn it and how to get to the next step. And I think it's absolutely critical to choose one thing and turn the wheel. And I've had a few wheels spinning, as you know, and it just slows you down and takes your focus. So I've really learned that I must focus on one at a time. So all I talk about with Carol, month in, month out, is my holiday let business and my progress on that. That's all I talk about. Yeah. And that really works. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And then we have 6 wealth coaches now, and obviously a wealth of experience across all of them. And it's important for all members to check in on a regular basis. And some months we know that the wealth building journey is a long journey, and some months you might not feel like you've made progress, but we still encourage just, jump on that call, because just one relationship opportunity idea, as Kevin says, that's all it takes.
Absolutely. And there are times when, I kind of think, I've got my call with Carol in a couple of days' time. Have I done my actions? What have I achieved? And it'd be so easy to say, to just think I'm going to cancel it because I've not made any progress. But, so many times I've got onto those calls and said, I'm really stuck and I'm here and this is how I feel. And the coach's job is, of course, to coach you out of that. Where are you stuck? Let's get you unstuck. What if you did this? What if you just took this one action? Would that get you unstuck? And, and that's what they're skilled in doing. That's what a coach is there to do. And that's really worked for me. And back to the monthly report, as well, Christian, I fill it in, many times I'm saying I've not added anything to my wealth thermometer, but then, every perhaps, 6 months or so, there might be quite a big bump up because, I've acquired a property or I've done something else to add to my asset income, and so I think, I would say just don't be afraid of reporting that, you're adding zero. And even if that goes on for sort of 3-4 months, you're still reporting on the momentum and you're reporting on the action you're taking. And then when you come to read through those reports, I always read last month's report before I, write the one that I'm writing now. And you can see, wow, that's where I was at last month. Actually, I have moved forward. Even if the money hasn't changed, the action will have moved forward. And I think, that is the really key thing to focus on. Am I taking action and am I moving forward? Because if you do that, then we all know the results will follow.
Absolutely. And you've teed it up for me because step 8 is results. So, you've just mentioned importance and we drill this home, never let 30 days go by without doing something to build your wealth. So, we are here every month to check in with members in multiple different ways and make sure that you are tracking your results. You've mentioned the progress reports, but of course, when new members join, we send out a wealth chart. And, it's always great when we're on Zoom calls, we see the charts in the background and lots of the other printouts and stuff stuck on the wall. So it's really good. So, in terms
you can't see mine, Chris, because it's not in the background because, of course, it's exactly where it should be, which is straight in my eye line. It's above my desk. I'm looking at it there. And that is there every time I'm on a phone. I sit at this desk all day. This is where I work. So every phone call, every time I have 5 minutes to daydream, that's what I'm looking at. And that is part of it because that's my accountability. accountability. That's, that is tracking my progress. That is where I just stand up with my pen and I jot down a few ideas of, what I'm committing to working on this month. And I look at that constantly. And that's just a fantastic reminder of what I'm meant to be doing. Keeps me focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there any key results that you can think of recently that have helped you increase that thermometer?
Probably my key one is my holiday let. So we're probably about a month away now from getting the first income, but I'm really looking forward to recording the first month's bookings on my wealth thermometer, Chris. So yeah, it's been a little while since I last added to my wealth thermometer because it's been, with COVID and everything, it's just taken a while to get that purchase over the line, and then it's taken a while to get the refurb done just because of all the delays in sort of materials and the availability of the trades. But that will be the next thing that I add, and I think 1 month, possibly 2 at a push, but hopefully only 1 month away from adding that.
Brilliant, brilliant. So step 9 then is accelerate. And of course, by repeating the process that we've just been through of choosing your pillar, then your strategy, understanding where your leverage is coming from, then you will eventually move towards financial independence. And for most people, that journey from insecurity to security to independence takes on average about 5 years, some longer, some shorter. But what do you see, Louise, as being key to helping you to continue to stay focused and to reach your financial goals?
Chris, I think it's just what I said before about trusting the process and following the process. So, every time I turn the wheel and get a result, which I'm about to do by turning this holiday let wheel, the first time, I am very close to getting a result now and adding income. You make 2 decisions. You either say, I didn't enjoy that, that's not for me, or actually that was successful. I enjoyed it. That is for me. And so I'm just going to do it again and again and again, which is, I think, where I will be, where me and my business partner will be. So yeah, for me, how do you keep on track? You trust the process, you believe in the process, and you follow the process. And as with most things in life, if you trust and follow a process, you'll get a result. So that's me. Just stick with the process, keep tracking, keep reporting, checking in with my wealth coach. They're all the things that I intend to do for years to come.
Great. And of course, building recurring income is the main focus of the program. But have there been any other byproducts of being a member of the Wealth Builders community that you've enjoyed, Louise?
Oh, I'm going to sound really corny, Chris, but I've made some really good friends. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I committed early to my buddy groups. I'm in a couple of buddy groups. We talk to each other sort of, week in, week out. We're working on similar things, and we just encourage each other. We share knowledge, share tips. We use it as accountability, but also as support. Whether that's support in terms of knowledge or whether it's just emotional support, because some of this is hard, right? It's not easy. So I think that's been a real byproduct. His relationships, his friendships that I'm sure will last a lifetime. And just meeting great people, meeting the coaches, meeting other people in the program that I can learn from, meeting other people that I can work with going forward. They've all been fantastic byproducts of the program.
Yeah, well, we absolutely love having you as one of our star members, Louise.
Oh,
And thanks so much for sharing today. Well done, and keep up the great work.
thanks so much, Chris. Thank you. Bye.